Good morning. Welcome into Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill and live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Speaking of which, I should probably join the stream, huh?
Hey, good morning, man.
Good morning. That's Andrew Rogers. I'm Ravi Lulla. How are you this morning,
Hey,
Andrew?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. These last 4 days catching up from that Vegas jet lag has not been easy.
Yeah.
And, partially because I've been taking a nap midday, so it's been harder to go to sleep at night.
Yep.
But, after the show, at least this week, it hasn't been, oh, man, okay, you have, X, Y, and Z to get accomplished. You'll stay awake. Like I've had kind of a slower week.
Okay.
And, if you only have like a few things to worry about, like maybe doing the laundry or, making dinner and those are such long periods of time, like long breaks in between.
I got a little nap time in there.
Yeah, so I take a nap and I set myself up for failure on, what was it, Wednesday? I think I took a 4-hour nap.
Oh, no.
Which is essentially going to bed.
I would say that's anything over 3 hours. You just went to bed, brother.
Well, and I set a 2-hour alarm.
Oh, no.
Turned off the alarm and then just woke up naturally 2 hours later. So I've been trying to get my body back into radio show shape.
Yeah.
I feel like next week
reacclimated a little bit.
I'm going to get back to the grind and we'll be good to go. But no, I'm just a little tired. I'm happy that it's Friday. I'm sure a lot of people out there too are happy it's Friday.
Listen, it's great to be here on a Friday. I texted you. I'll full disclosure here. I got here like 18 seconds before the show started, approximately.
That you did.
And that is not normal. I'm usually, I give myself a little bit of time to settle in, get prepared. But it was kind of one of those mornings. I was telling you as I was sitting down in that 18 seconds, I was like, I give myself a little leeway when I wake up in the morning. So if I've got, 8 or 10 things to do before I actually leave the house, or, get dressed, brush my teeth, let the dogs out, whatever, I've got time for like 2, maybe 3 of those things to take longer than they should before I'm in trouble. Today was like a 4-thing morning. And so there was a moment where I was like, oh, this could be a problem. Like,
can you tell me what went wrong?
Yeah.
Please tell me like you were brushing your teeth and then toothpaste got on your shirt. So you had to change your shirt.
So first of all, it's important to note, and I'm not trying to be dramatic here, but it is contextually, it's important. I'm having surgery directly after the show. Like I'm going basically here. I'm letting my dogs out one more time. I'm going to the hospital. Nothing major. I've got a little trigger finger is what they call it here. My finger doesn't bend anymore because of the tendons or something. So they're going in, they're fixing that. So nothing major, but there's things you have to do to be prepared for the surgery. And usually I shower the night before, and
you don't want to be smelly on the table.
Well, yeah, I shower the night before just in general. I usually shower at night before bed. But I remembered this morning, because I forgot last night, that you're supposed to wash with this like special antibacterial soap before surgery. So I had to take another shower this morning. That's thing number 1.
That's a long one.
It is.
That's a good 5 minutes.
I set a timer for 8 minutes, and it took about that long because you have to like really scrub in the antibacterial soap. So that was an extra 8 minutes that I wasn't anticipating. Number 2, my dog, I'm pretty sure there's like a coyote or something running through my neighborhood, because I've seen him, first of all, but I live there's lake in my neighborhood, right? So there's some like wildlife occasionally, usually not coyotes, but you'll see a deer every now and then and a turkey and whatever. And I don't know, like a week and a half ago, my wife and I are driving home through the neighborhood, and we see this thing scurry out in front of the car. And I was like, that was a weird looking dog. And she goes, that's a coyote, babe. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Is that a husky?
I was like, that's a fuzzy looking dog. And so I think he's just running through the neighborhoods, whatever. And so my dogs have had this habit of getting really intensely like sniffing around the yard. I could not get Doug to come in this morning. Just couldn't do it. We have a pine tree.
To the point where you had to go out and get him?
Not just that. So we have this pine tree where he likes to burrow his way in, like all the way to the trunk. I don't know if you're familiar with pine trees. They are very pokey. I don't want to follow him
And
in there.
sticky.
Yes, I don't want to like burrow my way in to the trunk. Also, I had already taken my antibacterial shower at this point, so I couldn't do that. Otherwise, we'd be having another 8-minute shower or whatever. So I'm trying to coax Doug out.
It's like a cartoon at this point.
It is. Yeah, I'm trying to coax Doug out with like little, his little treats and stuff, and whatever he was.
Ooh, a piece of candy.
Whatever he was smelling on that tree must have been the most interesting thing in the world, because I had like actual strips of steak I was trying to lure him out with. Not interested at all. So that was a significantly longer adventure than I anticipated. Thing number 3 was you're not supposed to really eat anything before surgery, right? They're like, you can have some Gatorade, whatever. And I was like, I'll be fine. I won't eat anything, whatever. Well, my blood sugar goes low this morning. And so I was like, well, I have to get the Gatorade now because I can't have my blood sugar go low. I thought I had Gatorade at the house. Guess what? I do. Did you know Gatorade expires?
No.
It does, apparently. I cracked open a fruit punch Gatorade, and it was rancid, I think is the right word for it. I did not think I had bought it that long ago, but then I checked the bottle. It's like expired July 2023. And I was like, apparently I did buy it a very long time ago.
Good to know.
Yeah, don't drink expired Gatorade. It's very bad. It honestly, it's like tasting bad orange juice. It's really bad. Would not recommend it. That was 3.
That would explain the expiration date, Ravi.
Yes, it was really, really bad. What was 4? I don't remember what 4 was.
4 was, I'm stressing myself out, so I just lost 2 minutes.
I think, honestly, I think that was like, I just having to go to surgery today and like trying to make sure everything was lined up before I left the house. I think that was just the extra anxiety of that was number 4. So we're here. We're doing a radio show. It's going to be terrific. We're having a great time. I just, had a little bit of a rough start to the day.
Hey, you know what? You're taking ownership. You're taking ownership of your day.
We like people that take ownership. That's it's funny that you mentioned that, because you sent me this clip last night of Coach Rule at the Texas High School Coaches Association,
which was a little while ago.
It was
last summer.
Yeah.
And it just resurfaced.
Yeah. And I don't know why. It just kind of popped up in our timelines. And I had seen the clip before, but you sent it to me and you're like, hey, maybe look at this and see, because the situation at Nebraska has been pretty unusual in the sense of, no major pieces have left for the transfer portal. A couple major pieces have decided, hey, I'm going to use an extra year or try and get, Marcus Washington trying to get an extra year to come back to play at Nebraska. You've seen a bunch of high-profile transfer guys come in here. You've seen, obviously, the Dylan Raiola situation. And you're like, it's an interesting thing to look back on before, because he said these things before year 1, like before the first game of the season. And basically, the gist of what he said was that he has a standard that he has to set for the program, right? And that involves holding people accountable to that standard. But listen, everybody talks about a standard, right? Hey, the standard is the standard. We hear Coach Rule say that all the time. We talk about, hey, the process and whatever term that the coach of that particular organization, program, whatever, wants to use. Everybody has that, right? But then he went on, and this is one of the things I love about Coach Rule, is he doesn't stop at the cliche, right? Because most cliches are true on some level, right? Like the standard's the standard. Got to trust the process.
He follows through with experience.
It's about the journey, not the destination, whatever your cliche is, right? But not just that he follows through, but then he explains why the cliche is true and how the cliche becomes true, right? In this instance, he talks about, hey, I've got to set the standard, and then I've got to hold guys accountable. And he's like, but we won't win until my standard is their standard, right? When the players adopt that standard, and that's where that word you talked about, ownership, comes in, right? When the players take ownership of the standard, and then all of a sudden Coach Rule is not the one holding you accountable, Dylan Raiola is the one holding you accountable, or Nash Hutmacher is the one holding you accountable,
or you're holding yourself accountable.
Or you're holding yourself accountable. When Coach Rule's standard when you take ownership over that, and that becomes the team standard, and then the accountability comes from within, either within the person or within the team itself, that's when winning happens. And I think that's a huge part of what we've seen in terms of player retention and player acquisition, because a lot of guys will hold you to the standard, right? A lot of guys will say, hey, this is the standard. If you don't meet it, you can't play for me, right? It's that extra step of the standard becoming ownership where that's where things become special. And we've heard DB talk about this with the 90s teams at Nebraska, where they were more scared, probably isn't the right word, but I'll use it just because I can't think of a better one right now. They were more scared of letting their teammates down and being held accountable by their teammates than they were their coaches. Because if you didn't do what you were supposed to do, you knew it was going to be taken care of by the older guys in the locker room before the coaches even ever had a chance. And that's where things become special. And at the same time, it's really hard to do, and it's really hard to maintain. Because as soon as you have a group that has just a little bit of a breach in that ownership, it's really easy for that breach to just split the whole thing apart, right? We've heard DB talk about that with the 96 team. Guys got a little bit selfish sometimes. Guys got a little bit too interested in what was happening to them, and it became less about, hey, let's lift each other up, and more about, hey, quit making me look bad. And that's where you have problems.
Yeah, and you get that a lot on a lot of different teams. In fact, you probably get it on every team you've played on once before. And, you brought up a good point there with player retention and player acquisition and how these steps have led to a multitude of both. I sat back and thought last night, and I do this a lot, especially during recruiting periods, of what are they thinking? I try to put myself in their shoes.
The recruit shoes?
Yes, the recruit shoes. What are they thinking when they are having a conversation with Coach Rule? What are they thinking when they speak to Dylan Raiola about why he chose Nebraska and why he thinks I should go to Nebraska too? What are they thinking when Coach Coop walks into the room and, shares his expectation? Because even though it's the same as Coach Rule's, it still sounds a little bit different because again, it goes differently. It goes back to experience, because Coach Rule has so much experience and at all different levels that he can go into a situation and say, hey, I know what you're probably thinking. Whereas Coach Coop, he's so much younger and has a different set of experiences that he goes in with a couple of different analogies, but it still applies to the same expectation that they're both meeting on. And, I just have to think, like, it's not just, wow, I can play for that dude. Like that's not just what a recruit is thinking. I think it's also, wow, I want to be that dude. I want to emulate what he does. I want to lead for my brothers. I want to lead like he's taught me to lead. Like, these are things that, if Coach Rule's having a conversation with you, it's like, nah, I can go to war with that guy. Like I can do what he's talking about, and I can be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And that goes into the standard, right? The standard is the lowest of the low expectation. Like, that is like the baseline. Yeah. That is the standard. But no one's expected to be successful at the baseline. Like, you're not going to have a team that wins a national championship if you sit at the baseline. No, you're going to have a team that wins a national championship when you go from the baseline and you take it up 2 notches. And then you're like, okay, here's our expectation. And then when you start seeing some growth in your program and you're seeing some wins, then that growth becomes 2 steps higher and 2 steps higher. And you get to a point to where, okay, it may be difficult to think that this is the expectation, but this is what these guys set, not me.
Yeah.
And that's why we are proving to the world that we can be the team everybody thought we could be. And so, if you set the expectation and let them decide if they want to supersede it, you'll know right away what guys want to be there and what guys don't. There's a kid I coached in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
His name's Sam Dinkelman. He plays baseball up in Grand Island. Doesn't need a babysitter. Like I'm going to steal that quote from DB. We mentioned his name a little bit. Doesn't need a babysitter. He's somebody that always knows the objective.
Yeah.
Always exceeds expectation in aspects of the game, whether he's succeeding or he's failing.
Mm-hmm.
He could be going 0 for 18 at the plate, but you won't think there's a problem at all when he takes the field to play shortstop or second base, because he doesn't let other parts of his game get impacted by one thing that, it's just not going right for him.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you have a player like that, and there's plenty of players in the Nebraska football program that are like that, when you have a guy that's like that, how easy is it for you, Ravi, to say, like, you're coming into the program now and you're watching, Heinrich Harburg struggle a little bit last season, but he got some wins for the program. And then, his job is practically getting taken over because you have the number one quarterback recruit in the country coming in. You watch him still fight through every day. You watch and see how competitive he is in practice. What does that make you want to do? I want to be like that guy. Like I want to have the same mindset as that dude. Even when I am forgotten about, I'm still going to show every day that I belong on the field in some way, shape, or form. And those are the type of guys that you're getting in the program now, because you have that sort of leadership from the top down. And it's becoming that ownership that Coach Rule is preaching. He understands to own the moment. And getting that point across to his team has stood out, that they're owning moments. I mean, I always think back to that speech on Friday night or Sunday night, rather, in Illinois, when they had that early game on Friday. And they're coming off a loss, and coach has them in the middle of the field, and he's having them own the moment of the week before and turn it around for a win against Illinois. People just like honesty. They like when people are straight up with them. Just tell them what's up. Don't beat around the bush. And that's the way this coaching staff operates. The last point I'll say about ownership, like, you have to own it, right? Everybody has a story. If you share yours, maybe someone else can relate in their own way. And so own is to you as you are to own. Like that word goes basically hand in hand. It means you. When you own something, that means it's yours, right? So that's why you can go from one end of that stick to the other. If we talk about a drop pass, let's talk about that drop pass in that Buffalo game. Deep ball to Diggs. Like, Diggs has to own that he dropped that ball. Yeah. But also, Josh Allen has to own that he threw that ball. And, he's probably thinking, if I would have thrown that maybe 3 inches to the left, maybe Diggs had a better chance of catching that. The O-line's probably thinking, man, if I would have given Josh maybe a little extra time, to make that throw, even though he had plenty of time in the world and the O-line did a great job there, but they're still probably taking ownership of that play. And then you may have another receiver saying, man, if I would have ran this route, maybe double coverage wouldn't have taken place there. And I could have drawn the safety to me, and Diggs could have been one-on-one. There's so many things that you just own. Everybody has to own. But Nebraska is owning their destiny right now. They are, because it started with, off-season champs, right? Getting Dylan Raiola. But then look at the 2 weekends they've had in recruiting. Yeah. They had 29, 30 kids last weekend. They're going to do the same thing this weekend. And they're owning their destiny by doing things like that.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I've said this on the air or not before, but it bears repeating, even if I have. There's a buddy of mine who does a lot of, he's a pastor, so he does a lot of counseling for married couples and stuff like that. And I've known him since I was 13, 14 years old. And so he's kind of mentored me through a lot of my life. And one of the things he told me at one point, I don't even remember when it was that you're always 1% wrong in every situation. You're never 100% right. You're never 100% wrong.
Unless I BS my way through it and I convince somebody of that 1%.
But then you still know you're not 1%. You still, you may have convinced somebody else, but you still know deep down. In every situation.
It depends on how well I convinced myself that I was right there.
In every situation, whether it's on a football team, whether it's in life, whether it's in your marriage, whatever it is, no matter what situation happens, you contributed to that situation. At least maybe it's not 1%, maybe it's 0.1%, maybe it's 0.0, like maybe it's a tiny fraction of a percent, but you're there, you contributed to that situation in one way or another. So instead of focusing on, hey, you're 80% wrong, I'm only 20% wrong, let's focus on your 80%. What the ownership portion of this is, hey, let me fix my 20%. Because then that lets everyone know that I know I didn't reach the standard either. I may have been closer to the standard than you were. Like if you've got if you've got 12 seconds to run those 110-yard gassers or whatever, it's like you may have done it in 12 and a half and I may have done it in 14, but guess what? We both missed the standard, right? So instead of you telling me, hey, you need to hurry your butt up, get the let out and get there. And it's like, well, you also didn't make it.
You also missed. You're
it's
a part of the problem. Be a part of the solution,
right,
not a part of the problem.
And in order to be part of the solution, you have to acknowledge your part in the problem, right? Like the Josh Allen example is great. Was that a straight up drop by Diggs? Absolutely. Could Josh Allen have thrown it like a foot further and he'd have a little more separation on the corner? Absolutely. Could, like you said, another receiver drawn a little bit of attention away from Diggs? Absolutely. Could the O-line had given him even another half second to make him feel a little bit more comfortable? And maybe not just on that play, right? But if he's been rushed the whole game, maybe he's hurrying a little bit because he doesn't think he's going to have the time, even if he does. Like, you have to be willing to accept whatever your responsibility is in that situation. Otherwise, ownership is not possible. And at the same time, everyone else has to be able to do that too. That's what the team is, right? Because if no one else, like let's say you're in a marriage, you're willing to take responsibility for either your 1% or your 90%, wherever you are on the spectrum that day, but the other person isn't willing to do that, well, guess what? It's not going to work out, right? Same thing with a team. If Josh Allen's like, hey, I should have thrown that ball half a yard further, that's my bad. And Diggs is like, man, I should have held on to that thing, that's my bad. And the O-line's like, we did our job. Mm-hmm. It's on you guys, skill players. That's not going to work long term, right? That's not going to work out. That's why ownership is so important, because in a game, especially like football, where everything is so interconnected, not just from position to position, but from play to play, it is so hard to not. I mean, it's impossible to win if you don't have
right. It's a half second difference. Like, that's it. In football, you got to be quick. You got to be quick decision makers. And that's why you all have to be one.
They say game of inches for a reason. Coming up next, we'll set up the show, let you know what we've got coming your way on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're also on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. Before we jump back into our conversation, want to set up the show we have for you today because it is a good one. Coming up at 8 o'clock, we're going to do something a little bit different. Our fearless leader, Sasha, tweeted out a prompt yesterday about what random sports moment. So not really associated. There's a couple of these that have like the teams that I like in there, but they're not championship moments or anything like that. There's
right. It's not directly correlated to your fandom.
Yeah. Like it's not like the 04 Red Sox winning the World Series or something like that. Right. These are, I think all three of mine are, well, the two of mine that are with teams I like are regular season moments, just kind of these random moments. So we're going to do that. We're going to kind of walk through why it's sort of like the Roman Empire thing we did, except for a little bit more specific and do a few specific moments. Andrew and I each have 3 of those, so we will get to that. Coming up at 8:30, we're going to talk to Supernovas associate head coach Laura Kuhn. We will talk to Brian Spielberger from PFF, who he covers the NFL. We will talk to him at 8:45. Of course, at 9 o'clock, we'll talk to our very own Mike Sautter about the high school and Nebraska basketball sports scene. At 9:30, we had some big news from Union Omaha yesterday with the unveiling of their stadium plans for downtown Omaha.
That looks so sick.
So we're going to talk to our friend Martie Cordaro to learn a little bit more about that, and then we will wrap up the show as we always do on Friday with Matt Vrzal. But wanted to hop back into that conversation we were having about Coach Rule and going in with that clip that Shane played about leadership. And, you mentioned something in the first segment that kind of caught my attention. You were talking about the player retention and why people want to follow him and things like that. And It wasn't just about, hey, I want to follow him. You're like, I want to emulate him. I want to be like him. And I think it's maybe more like I want to be, not that you want to be Coach Rule, but you want to be a man like Coach Rule. You want to be a person who cares about other people like Coach Rule does. And it's kind of a really weird analogy, but the first season of Ted Lasso that I watched, right? The overwhelming themes of that, especially first season for me, were his kindness to people and his accountability when he did something wrong. When he did something wrong, he took ownership for it every single time. Like, if you rewatch that show, especially the first season, look at how many times, and you can tell who the good people in that show are versus the bad people in that show are, versus if they take accountability and how they take accountability, right? Because there's basically three different ways. There's taking accountability without being called out on it. You're like, hey, I recognize I did this wrong. I'm going to come forward and be like, that's my bad. I apologize. Then there's the people who they get called out on something and you're like, you know what? I didn't see that. You're right. That's on me. Then you've got the people who get called out on it and then make excuses. They get called out on it and then they try and convince you they didn't do anything wrong. Watch that show again with that framework and you'll be like, oh. And
be curious.
Yeah, not judgmental, right? And so when I watched that show, though, the first time I watched the first season, and I've seen that show several times because I'm obsessed with it.
But very good show.
The first time I watched that first season, I had this really strange feeling of this show makes me want to be a better person because of the example that Ted Lasso leads. And listen, I get it's a fictional character, right? But I think it's a similar situation when people talk to Coach Rule. I think they leave conversations with Coach Rule, maybe not saying, oh, I want to be a better person, but maybe saying, I think he can help me become the best version of myself. And that is incredibly important when you're talking about an era of free player movement and NIL, and people have a lot of reasons to leave and not a lot of reasons to stay. But you have to give them something more than, well, we'll match whatever NIL deal comes through the door. Or we'll make sure we can guarantee playing time or whatever. Because he doesn't do that. He doesn't guarantee playing time. And so if you're not guaranteeing playing time, and yeah, they're on par with NIL, like that's fine, whatever. But other people have as much money or more money. Other people have great resources. Other people have great facilities. What's the difference maker for a place like Nebraska? And it's that when the head coach speaks, the people that listen say, that guy can help me be the best version of myself. And that changes everything because that will make up for whatever deficiencies that you may have in infrastructure or whatever else. And for some people, at least, you'll be like, oh yeah, no, I'll take a little less to stay here. I'll take a non-guarantee to stay here because I believe long-term that's what's best for me. And the people that stay are the people that are going to lead Nebraska where they want to go.
Well, and everybody wants to be challenged, right? And so, like,
Not everybody knows it, though.
Coach Rule, like, doesn't just sit down in a meeting and try to play match game, like you said. What he does a really good job of, and then I've had, conversations with him before, is no matter what the situation is, or if it's a casual sit down or if it's a professional sit down, the way that he presents information to you is more in like a challenging light. He makes you think, right? And that's what I think is the biggest takeaway for a lot of recruits at the end of the day is, he's not BSing you when you walk into the room, and he makes you want to listen. Right? And there are so many situations where, like, I'm sitting somewhere and I'm just like, like, when is this going to be over?
Yeah.
Like, there are plenty of times where when I go to church and, the priest is up there for a homily and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, if you would have stopped right there, the message would have been great. But then you add it on and add it on. And then what does my mind do? It goes left, it goes right, it goes forward, it goes back. I'm not the only one that thinks that either.
Yeah. It's very common.
But when you know your timing, when you know, like, how to present the challenge, and then just like let the challenge speak for itself and not try to over explain the challenge. Like, that's what Coach Rule does really well, because you sit there and you're just in awe of what he's telling you. And you're like, man, I can relate that to this aspect of my life. You know, Coach Rule may say, like, you know, frontline guys are the quarterback and the head coach that have to go talk to the media after a loss and they're 1-14 and, you know, it's not a fun thing to do. But, you know, that example makes me think about that one time in school where I had to do this project and like people always take somebody else's personal challenge and apply it to how can I relate to that? But he lets the challenge speak for itself. And that's why you see a lot of these young players want to come play for Coach Rule, because you're right. They don't know they want to be challenged, but when they are presented with that challenge, it becomes like a fire inside of them to prove it, to prove that you can beat that challenge.
It excites them in a way that they probably haven't been, you know, motivated by previously. Exciting. Like you know, you mentioned, you know, kind of an example with the priest. My favorite teachers that I ever had weren't the ones that let me skate by and do whatever I wanted and whatever, although like I enjoyed that at the time. But it was the ones that are like, hey, you're capable of more than this. I'm going to need you to provide.
Well, it's also the ones, too, that you wanted to prove to.
Yeah.
Right? Like I had a teacher in high school. He was my running coach in grade school, ended up being my chemistry teacher in high school. And like I had like a good relationship with him. So I wanted to prove to him that I could get this work done, not only efficiently, but also so I could overachieve in that way, because I wanted to show you that I care. And like when you have a teacher like that stand in front of you, you're going to get players that also want to prove to you, like, I'm going to be the best right now.
Well, and part of it too is like when someone believes in you, right? Because the way I felt with the teachers specifically in high school were these two teachers. One of them was my Latin teacher. One of them was my AP American History teacher and civics teacher, RIP Mr. Eicher. They believed in me and that I had more in me, whether intelligence, whatever, than I was giving them. And so I wanted to prove them right about what they believed about me. And it's the same thing when you believe the opposite. If you don't believe in someone, they're going to try and prove you right. If you do believe in someone, they're going to try and prove you right. So you get to decide which thing they're trying to prove. Coming up next, there's been a lot of coaching movement across a bunch of different sports over the last week or so. Let's get into some of that next here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, wrapping up hour number 1 here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're going to talk to one of our friends from the Omaha Supernovas at 8:30, but I want to remind you, a week from tomorrow, the next home match for the Omaha Supernovas, February 3rd at CHI Health Center against the San Diego Mojo. Make sure you get to supernovas.com to see what you can get in terms of tickets. I said it yesterday. I'll say it again today. Got that 11-6 mark on Wednesday. Let's see if we can beat it. Listen, that's a Wednesday night. This one's on a Saturday, all right? We can beat 11-6 on a Saturday, folks. Let's see what we can do. Let's show the Omaha Supernovas and the Pro Volleyball Federation why this is the flagship franchise of professional volleyball in the U.S. You'll get to see the best talent you've ever seen on a volleyball court. NCAA champions, All-Americans, Olympians, all of them will be playing. Make sure you join the volleyball movement, sweeping across the country. It's been in Omaha and Nebraska for a while, but the rest of the country is starting to take notice as well. Go to supernovas.com for schedule, roster, tickets, whatever you need to know. Supernovas.com has you covered. Wanted to kind of take that conversation we were having and spin it off into some of the other coaching changes we've seen here. This one isn't really necessarily relevant to that conversation, but it is worth noting. I know it's not a huge European football audience here, but Jurgen Klopp, he's the manager of Liverpool.
Jurgen who?
Klopp, like clip clop, like a horse.
A clip, clop, a clippy,
Exactly.
Clip, clap, clap,
no, I think that's hip hop.
Oh, different song.
He has been
that's the European version of the song.
It's the European soccer version of the song. He's been the manager at Liverpool since I believe 2014 or 2015. He has basically overseen the best period of the franchise's history. They're leading the Premier League again this year. He's said that he's resigning at the end of the year. As far as we know, there's no There's no major scandals or anything like that. He's in his mid-50s. This is kind of like, for an example, this is kind of like Jay Wright retiring a couple years ago, and we're just all like, wait, what? We all thought there was more time left here. So that's a huge shock in that world. In the NBA world, I was a little bit shocked a couple days ago when the Bucks, who were 30-13 at the time, I don't know if you know, that's pretty good. That's a good record. They're just
second place,
a couple games behind the Celtics for first place in the East. They let go of their head coach, Adrian Griffin, and it was reported that it was chiefly because mostly Dame, but also Giannis to a certain extent, did not like the direction of where the team was going. And it kind of kept bringing up in my head, like, how much say should these players have over their coach? Because I get it to a certain extent, right? I understand it. I understand because college players sort of do have a say, right? They choose where to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
They choose, and a lot of times that is based on who their coach is going to be, whether it's a position coach, coordinator, or head coach. A lot of those college decisions,
more times than not, it's who the coach is. And
right.
when you see guys enter the transfer portal, it's when their coach either gets fired, he leaves, he retires,
and a lot of time they follow him, right? We saw that with a bunch of guys leaving Alabama when Saban left. We saw that with a bunch of guys following DeBoer from Washington to Alabama when he took that job. It's very common. One of the biggest reasons players pick a school in
Christian
college.
McCaffrey wanted to come to Nebraska. I don't know why the NCAA didn't allow it when Matt Rule got here. But, I think I was a little disappointed that he didn't get that waiver.
I think he's got a year left. He's not like that Miami tight end that's been used in 9 years. But a lot of times it's because of the coach. So in the college level, you sort of have say over who your coach is, either by where you commit or where you transfer to. In professional sports, you don't really have a say in who your coach is. Now, if you're LeBron, you can probably sway that a little bit. If you're, Michael Jordan was very clear, hey, I'm not playing for anybody but Phil Jackson. And Phil Jackson got let go and Michael Jordan retired, right? So he didn't really get a say in it. They called his bluff and he's like, well, I guess I'm gone. But I wonder, because these players are so much more valuable to the franchise than coaches are. Let's be honest. In 99% of the time, right? Especially these high-level players. I don't know if Dame is, but Giannis certainly is. I sit there and I wonder, okay, I get that players want to have some autonomy over their situation. At the same time, what we were just talking about with Coach Rule and taking ownership, and the Bucks were expected when they brought Dame in, hey, they're going to be the favorites in the East, and they've underperformed a little bit. I mean, 30-13, that's a good record. They're in a good spot. It's not like they're 500 and trying to figure out what to do. At what point is it, hey, you have to take ownership for what role you played in getting here? Like, especially Damian Lillard. This is a dude that's never won a championship. This is a dude that only made one conference finals ever. This is a dude that maybe doesn't have that sort of cachet to be like, yeah, I need a different coach. And frankly, one of the problems with the Bucks is the drop-off defensively from Drew Holiday, who they traded away in that Damian Lillard deal, to Damian Lillard, who is not a good defender. That's one of the major issues with this team. So at what point do you have to say, okay, is this Adrian Griffin's fault, or is it the way the team was constructed that was handed to Adrian Griffin? And I did have a really hard time kind of weighing, okay, yeah, Giannis probably should get some say in who his coach is. But at the same time, is it Adrian Griffin's fault that Dame Lillard's never been a good defender?
No, and I don't know if it's just that piece of it. Because as you said, I mean, this is a business. Players have so much say because it's not a ranking scale of GM, coach, player, which is how everybody kind of looks at sports.
Yeah,
players are the bottom of the barrel. No, it's in the NBA especially. It's player, GM, coach. That's at least the ranking.
Star
scale.
Player. Yeah, it's franchise
but the
player.
Players are looked at as, hey, I am the ultimate power. And then the GM is like, I'm going to listen to what my players want because I don't want my franchise guy to leave.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I can replace a coach. Like, there's plenty of people that I can get to come in and coach. And so that's why you have that sort of scale.
And then you've got every other player below the coach.
Right. But you look at the Bucks, and here's what's made them successful this year. It's been that offensive piece.
Mhm.
They have the second best offense in the NBA. And as you said, yes, Damian Lillard isn't a good defender. But there were some things that Adrian Griffin did that also caused him to lose the job. And it was sort of with those defensive bleeds, as you were saying, but he couldn't patch those up. There was no bandage to actually get these players to buy into Griffin's vision. He didn't have a solid relationship with the key players on this team,
which is fair. Like, that's a fair reason.
And the issues started in training camp. He clashed with an assistant head coach in front of the entire team, and that coach resigned a few days later. Who was that coach? I'm pretty sure he was Damian Lillard's coach. And so, like, there's one issue there.
Mm-hmm.
And when you already spark bad blood in training camp,
mm-hmm.
what do you expect to get throughout the season with Dame if you fire his guy, right? And so there's other things too. Like, there was a point in time this season when, Andre Jackson Jr. is like their young guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's the guy. He's a rhythm disturber. He's a producer. He needs more opportunity. Yet they lean, what is it, Christian Braun? Brown.
Yeah.
They lean Christian Braun because of I just don't know. Like, they're guaranteeing him nightly minutes so he develops into a factor come playoff time.
Well, he's more offensively capable right now than Andre Jackson is.
Right. But Andre Jackson is, like I said, a rhythm disturber. Like, this is somebody that you want in there, especially defensively, when you're one of the worst defensive teams in the league.
Andre Jackson's dramatically better defensively. Brown's a lot better.
It's just about decision-making at the end of the day. I mean, decision-making kicked Budenholzer out,
mm-hmm.
and now it's kicked Griffin out. Well, if there's a championship window and you're in that window with who you have on your team, you need somebody that plays to the player, not plays to, I guess, himself.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to say that Griffin is selfish, but he was hard-nosed, hard-pressed on what needed to be done. And so the Bucks looked at that situation and said, no, we kind of need to lean more into who we got right now, because they don't want to lose out on the talent they have. It's kind of like your Curry example that
mm-hmm.
you always bring up.
Yeah.
Like, the Bucks are building for their championship. Meanwhile, the Warriors, even though Steve Kerr's a great coach,
mm-hmm.
the Warriors are kind of just settling with the comfortable thing and not, like, taking it one step further, not trying to go the distance again. They're trying to just do it with Curry because he's Curry.
Mm-hmm.
But they also need those extra pieces. What led Golden State to all of those championships? Well, not just Curry, but they got Durant at one point in time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another superstar. So when you have a superstar like Dame and you have a superstar, because he's a freak, like Giannis, this is your window. You're in that championship window. You need a guy that knows that. And who is that guy? At least for this team right now, Doc Rivers.
Well, they hope. And I think we met Pat Connaughton, not Christian Braun, in terms of the rotation piece. But my issue isn't necessarily like, oh, Adrian Griffin shouldn't have been fired, or Adrian Griffin should have kept the job, or whatever. I don't even know if Adrian Griffin should have been hired in the first place. My point is more at there has to be a position where the players have to take some level of accountability for what's happening. And I don't know if that's what happened here. Like, I don't know if half a season's enough to figure out if Adrian Griffin's the guy or not. What we do know is Doc Rivers has some level of success. He's also a little bit like Sean Payton in the fact that he hasn't won a title in about 16 years. So he's kind of trading in on an old chip there for a while. But coming up next, we're going to get to some of the sports moments that live rent-free in our head. Coming up next on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio, kicking off hour number 2 here on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We're on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Want to remind you, we're getting down to it. If you want to qualify for the Warhorse Sportsbook Festival of Games, they have a $100,000 prop card challenge and a $20,000 grand prize drawing, either cash or free slot play, that you are eligible to win every time you get an entry. How do you get those entries? Number 1, become a Warhorse Rewards member if you aren't already, which you should be. Number 2, Every time you place a $50 sportsbook bet, you get qualified to enter into this prop card challenge and the grand prize drawing. This is for the casino in Lincoln only. Have to go there to the casino, get those entries, and then once you have them, you've got until February 1st to get those entries qualified, and then you'll be able to make your prop card picks starting February 5th. Then you just got to go validate those things at the casino, and you'll be good to go. Confused about any of it? Want to know some more details? Go to warhorsecasino.com for more information, and they will have you covered. But here's what you need to know. You go 25 for 25 on your prop card, you're looking at $100,000. You go 0 for 25 on your prop card, you still got a chance to win the $20,000 grand prize drawing. Anywhere in between, you've got an opportunity to win some money from our friends at Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. That's the Warhorse Festival of Games. All right. You know what lives in my head all the time is our friends at Warhorse. You know what lives rent-free in my head, though, is a bunch of random sports moments. And, our fearless leader, Sasha, tweeted out this prompt, as we mentioned at the start of the show, about what random sports moments live rent-free in your head. And so when I think random, I think, okay, regular season, for the most part, or non-championship type moments. I think about games that I watched live and that I have a very specific memory of where I was when it happened. That's how I know it lives rent-free in my head, is I remember where and when I was watching this thing, and I can see it like it was yesterday.
And again, they aren't moments that are connected to our fandom of a team. So Ravi's Red Sox.
So I do have a couple that are connected.
Well,
but
I don't.
But
it's not all connected with me. Is that a Stranger Things quote?
I don't know.
But Stranger Things, Shane?
They're regular season games.
It's always Stranger Things.
There's always Stranger Things happening here. But for me, it's like regular season games or teams that I don't necessarily care about.
So I could have chosen David Freeze's.
You could have.
Hits it in the air to center.
Well, that's
we will see you tomorrow night.
That's like a major playoff moment, though.
Yeah, but that's still like what lives rent-free in my head.
Right. I think random either has to be disconnected from your fandom or like just kind of a random February night where there's not really any
I think
stakes.
You did the prompt wrong.
Well, listen, this is what lives rent-free in my head. I don't keep a ton of like non-things I care about just floating around my head.
Oh, I do.
Actually, I do.
My brain is always moving.
That's how I'm so good at trivia. I keep a bunch of nonsense in there. But let's get started. Why don't you go first?
So my first moment, and this is funny because like it's related to the Bulls, but it's a sports betting moment.
Mm-hmm.
I was betting on the Bulls Hornets game last year, and I took the Bulls money line, and I was just, I kind of like, it was an online slip at the time, so I couldn't actually like physically crumple up the piece of paper or like rip it to shreds.
I mean, you could toss your phone if you wanted to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, crack the phone screen.
Don't do that.
No, I was sitting on my couch watching the Bulls just crumble against the Hornets, and 45 seconds were left in the game. They were down 8, but then Zach LaVine just started like becoming more than he actually is as a human being. And he was having a big game.
Mm-hmm.
I think he ended that game with either like 42 or 49. So he was already having a big game. He was the hot hand. Feed him the rock. And, the reason this lives rent-free in my mind is Eric Collins has such an iconic voice as the Hornets play-by-play announcer. The good news is this game was in Charlotte. So that's the feed that I was getting when I was watching this game. And let's just say when the Bulls were going down the court on every drive,
mm-hmm.
the ball was always finding its way in. Shane, can you play the highlight of Eric Collins' call? This is when they were down 5 points and there was 15 seconds left.
Lead back up to 5. Kobe White, Saturansky. They won't go away. Good God. Always in the rearview mirror. Trouble. Loose. Chicago's got it. Oh, no! You're kidding! Hornets try and get it in. It's ripped away. And Zach LaVine, as he's done all night long, a three. His 13th. He finishes with 49.
There you go, 49 points. This man cashed a three to put him up 116 to 115. They scored 6 points. You heard him say,
you
heard the Hornets players on the court, no foul, no foul. Because, I mean, what is Saturansky just going to bury that tray right in your face? Yeah, he
Apparently.
will. Are you going to get that ball stolen on the inbounds? Yeah, you
Apparently.
are. Zach LaVine gets the ball. He's under the hoop, okay? They're down 2 points. Instead of trying to, like, force up a 2, this man dribbles out to the 3, bangs the gavel, bangs it home. And, yeah, let's just say court is adjourned.
That's the Reggie Miller special, right? When you, like, get it under the hoop and then you sprint out to the –
That guy is so – Eric Collins is so funny.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Just listen to his highlights. He is all over the headlines on – at least 5 times a year during the NBA season because of his just elaborate, just overpowering exuberant is good, exhilarating, like whatever adjective you want to use.
Kind of unique.
His broadcast style is so unique, and it makes you just want to listen. And those are the clips though that perfectly resonate with the audience online on social media, the people scrolling, because we like obnoxious things and the way he calls games is pretty obnoxious, but we love it.
Yeah. So I do love that call. That's a
You're kidding.
That's an incredible.
He was so mad.
That's an incredible call there by Collins. So one of my, I'll start with the most random because it's not connected to my fandom at all, is the Fiesta Bowl between Boise State and Oklahoma.
Good one.
I had zero rooting interest in that one except for I liked underdogs, right? And that was
watching AP.
Yeah, I mean you're watching Adrian Peterson. Boise State had been kind of this. That was sort of on the front end of them kind of getting rolling there. With Chris Peterson. That was January 1st, 2007. I was in Houston, Texas at my sister's house. Well, technically Sugarland, Texas at my sister's house. I'm watching this game on New Year's Day, and it was a night game, so it was kind of going a little bit late, but this thing was incredible back and forth. The Boise State gets to an early lead. Seems like they kind of have control of this game. Seems like they're going to win, and then they start having some trouble, right? They start having, Oklahoma starts to do Oklahoma things, and then the game's tied up. Boise State's going to have an opportunity to do a game-winning drive, and Jared Zabransky throws a pick six, and it's like, oh, no, there's like under a minute left. You're like, oh, that's it. They blew it. Next drive, that's where this comes in.
To move the chains. A last gasp for the Broncos.
Zabransky's legs might be critical here to save time on throwing the ball.
Down the middle, James, the lateral to the corner of the end zone. Can you believe that?
It's the pure shock in that's Tom Brenneman. The pure shock in his voice when he yells,
"Nobody saw it."
The lateral, and it perfectly encapsulated how I felt in that moment.
Everybody said the same thing. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because no one expected, because there was still enough time left where it wasn't kind of.
I think there was 16 seconds left.
Yeah,
in that game.
so you're like, hey, we've got a couple maybe
but
opportunities.
It was 4th down, and I don't know if he would have gotten the first down when he caught that ball. I think it was 4th and 16 or something crazy.
I don't think it was 4th down yet.
I'm pretty sure it was 4th down.
We'll have to do some Googling there. I don't think that was the 4th down play, but I might be wrong. But because I thought that was the start of the drive, because he's kind of setting up the scene where he's like, hey, Zabransky's legs might play a factor here. But the pure shock, because it wasn't you weren't expecting them to do the sort of, I think Vrzal calls it the pitchy woo woo, where they're kind of doing the 6-man football rugby style pitching all over the place.
Right.
It it took everybody by surprise because you thought they were going to, we're going to try and get into field goal, or we're going to try and get this thing into a Hail Mary range.
Fourth and 18 at the 50.
4th and 18 at the 50.
And the pitch was after a 15-yard pass. So it wasn't like guaranteed that he gets the first down.
So but the pitch just caught everybody off guard. Just everybody was stunned.
What a play call.
And that moment where he just yells, the lateral.
Everybody
just was the perfect. It's so simple, but it was perfect because it embodied the shock that everybody felt in that moment, because everybody thought he was just going to try and get the first down, just continue, because he had a little bit of space. I don't know if he was going to get it or not, but he was just going to try and get the first down. And, you run up, you spike, whatever, you try and keep the thing alive. But man, the lateral there was just chef's kiss.
Well, and how about the
dive into the end zone?
How about the overtime touchdown too? 4th and 2, and you have a running back.
Yes.
Throw a touchdown pass to your tight end. And do we have the final play of that game?
Oh, so did you end up getting the? No, okay. So then, and then
dang it.
I was saying, then you've got the
Statue of Liberty.
The Statue of Liberty with Ian. Oh, what was his name? Ian.
It was the guy that proposed to his girlfriend. Who was a cheerleader.
Number 41. Oh gosh, it was
Ian Johnson.
Ian Johnson. I kept wanting to say Ian Steer, but that was a one-time Creighton commit at power forward that never ended up playing here. It's weird, like the names that stick in your head. But yeah, Ian Johnson does the Statue of Liberty, proposes to it, chucks the ball into the stands.
Yeah,
proposes to his girlfriend.
Can you imagine coming away with that football?
Well, so he said later, he's like, my parents were sitting in that corner. He was trying to throw it to his parents. And
hey, Dad, catch!
He just chucks it into the stands. But then he goes and proposes to his cheerleader girlfriend. And it was one of the, from start to finish, one of the best college football games I've ever watched. But that play in particular, that moment of the lateral just lives rent-free in my head.
Now, the next one for me is not as crazy, but it was iconic for me because, when Steph Curry was making his March Madness run, I was still a little young. Like, I knew about it. I watched it, but do I really remember where I was when he was making that run? No. But the guy that was the next Steph Curry was Jimmer Fredette.
A couple years later.
And that is more of a core memory for me than Curry's moments.
Okay.
And this is one of the reasons why.
Here comes Jimmer. Long range.
Are you kidding me?
He's got his J back, folks, and the eye of the tiger. 4:56 to play. We're tied at 56. Fredette shooting that one from Provo.
That 3 against Florida, because Florida was a heavy favorite.
Yeah.
BYU was without their big man for some reason.
He got suspended or kicked out of school for violating BYU's honor code.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Jimmer had to do everything himself in this game. And now they didn't beat Florida, but that game was so can't take your eyes off of because he's Jimmer Fredette and how he was how that season was going for him. I just remember constantly in college after that, I would be shooting hoops down in the rec area. And there are days when no one else is on the court with you. And in my head, I would shoot threes from Jimmer's range. And I would play that call. Here comes Jimmer. Long range. Whoa. And it's just one of those things where it's just, you'd never forget those guys. You never forget those players. And even though it wasn't the Statue of Liberty, the 4th down lateral play, or, the Hornets play-by-play call of Zach LaVine doing something crazy at the end, Jimmer Fredette is a guy that nobody will ever forget.
Yeah.
Because of just the type of player he was for that team. It's kind of like what Johnny Manziel was for Texas A&M.
Yeah.
They never went very far.
Not professionally, no.
But it's just
guys,
in
their
it's
playoffs,
guys in college that are just
balling.
Dude, I will always remember those moments.
The next one for me, you brought up Steph Curry. Obviously, I'm a Warriors fan because of Steph Curry, but this isn't any of the championships or any of that. This is a random regular season game. It was against Oklahoma City on February 27th, 2016. And I think you'll know it as soon as Shane plays the call here. But I remember I was in my house. I was living in Ashland at the time. It was a late night game because, you know, the Warriors are West Coast, so it was always late. I probably should have been in bed by that point, but that was the year. That was the Warriors 73 win season. Obviously, they don't go on to win the title, but that's the most fun I've had watching regular season basketball was watching
when a team loses less than 10 games.
Well, just watching that team because of how beautiful the basketball was, right? And so this is my favorite team to have ever watched play basketball by far, and this is the moment that sticks out for me from that season more than anything. Go ahead, Shane.
They do have a timeout. Decide not to use it. Curry, way downtown. Bang! Bang! Oh, what a shot from Curry! With 0.6 of a second remaining.
The brilliant shooting of Stephen Curry continues. And he ties the NBA record with his 12th three-pointer of the game.
That was like the epitome of that season in that play because they were playing the Thunder, who they end up beating in the conference finals after coming back from 3-1. But it was the deep Curry three, just the audacity of it. The fact that he even took that shot because he's like 40 feet away. And he had time. He probably could have got 2 more dribbles, but he saw Andre Roberson take a half step back and he's like, this thing's going up. And the fact that, okay, it was his 12th three of the game, right? He ties the NBA record in that moment. The fact that they don't call a timeout, he's like, don't worry, I got this. Just the whole thing was iconic. And I think about him pulling up from about 40 feet and cashing that thing all the time. It is one of my all-time favorite random sports moments. It is just an elite Steph Curry moment. And you get the iconic double bang from Mike Breen as well, which you love to hear.
And you know what? Let's not forget too, like these moments are made also because of the broadcaster.
Oh, for sure.
In a lot of ways, really because of the broadcaster. Yeah. Because yes, the shot is huge, but these broadcasters are, as you put it in that Boise State call, are reacting the way we reacted at home, watching these things go down. And it reminded me a lot of when we were talking about rent-free moments, and this is my favorite broadcast call of all time.
Okay.
It is an off-the-radar sport.
Okay.
It is an Olympic event.
Okay.
And we're talking about when Michael Phelps was going for 8 gold medals.
I remember this well.
And there was a moment in time where the French relay team
which
came
was
out and
favored.
Yeah. They talked a lot of smack because they said they were going to be the ones that were going to
keep Phelps.
Be kind of the brick wall of Phelps getting his 8th gold medal. And Elaine Bernard came out and said we were going to smash them.
Yep.
And so the U.S. took that personally. In particular, the anchor of that relay team.
I have to make up some ground on Elaine Bernard, who stands 6'5" and can absolutely fly.
I just don't think they can do it, Dan. I mean, Jason Lezak has been there how many times in his career has he anchored this free relay and medley relay, but I just don't think he can do it. He's trying to ride that wave as much as possible.
Bernard is pulling away from him.
Lezak, the world record,
a 3-time Olympian. The world record is absolutely going to be shattered here. The United States trying to hang on to second. They should get the silver medal. Australia is in bronze territory right now, but Lezak is closing a little bit on Bernard. Can the veteran chase him down and pull off a shocker here?
Well, there's no doubt that he's tightening up.
Bernard is losing some ground. Here comes Lezak. Unbelievable at the end. He's done it. The U.S. has done it. He did it. He did it. Phelps' hopes alive.
He did it. That was everybody at home.
Yes, that's how you know you have an iconic moment is when one of the announcers, the play-by-play or the color analyst or whoever is just yelling, he did it. Like there's one call from the Doug Flutie Hail Mary against Miami where the guy just yells, he did it. Flutie did it. Like that's the whole call, right?
Right.
Like that's how you know you're having a great moment is when the announcer's totally lost for words and they're either just laughing maniacally or they're just yelling, he did it.
Did he do it?
I watch that relay at least 3 times a year.
Oh yeah. I remember where I was. I was at a Buffalo Wild Wings watching that one because I think that one happened on my birthday. I think.
Oh, happy birthday to you.
I think it was my 21st birthday. And so we were like getting like a couple beers at Buffalo Wild Wings, and because I didn't go too crazy on my 21st, but I'm pretty sure it was either that one or the other super close one that Phelps had. That it was on my actual birthday. Last one here. We've got a couple minutes left. Shane, go ahead and play, and people will just know what this is.
Ravi for 3. Just give him a look.
He did not ring the bell.
Raggy, quick release. Got it again.
Wow. Greens. Jeez, what a start.
Nanaga.
Vernon. Sheffield.
And Pure.
Oh, what a start. And remember, up at Providence.
Ravi straight away. Whoa! Wow. Uh-oh, you better get a timeout, Jay Wright. Reversal, Ravi again. Yeah!
Boy, talk about coverage.
And here come the Blue Jays. It looks spry today. Ravi again! Oh!
Boy, you better identify. I mean, Jay went over this scouting report. It's unbelievable. The distance, the accuracy, and they find the open guy. So unselfish.
Right. Now McDermott on the post with James Bell. Draws a double. Ravi again! Yeah!
You just can't leave him. The coaching is incredible.
Inside, sealed his man.
Look at that.
Ravi again for 3.
What a joke. I mean, it's absolutely comical.
That is, of course, the Ethan Ravi game against Villanova on January 20th, 2014. So that was actually all 9 of the 3-pointers. 2 of them were not Ravi in the first. But Creighton made 9 3-pointers in a row to start that game. 1 by Manigault, 1 by McDermott, the other 3 by Ethan Ravi. Or the other 7 by Ethan Ravi. Other 7 threes were by Ethan Ravi. That was, I mean, I mentioned the laughing maniacally. You just have Bill Rafferty just giggling to himself.
Well, because it's just so unreasonable to think that this happened.
And one of them is my favorite one in that stretch. I think it's the 4th or 5th one where Ravi barely crosses half court on a fast break. He gets the ball kicked to him, and it's kind of like a leaner. He's kind of just leaning into it and lets that thing go and rips it from about 35 feet, which you're probably in the moment like, hey, that's kind of a terrible shot because you're on a fast break, but he was feeling it. It was one of my most iconic memories. I named my dog after the guy. It's pretty good. Coming up next.
What, Ethan?
Ravi. That's my little German Shepherd, guys. Ravi.
My little German Shepherd, Ethan. Come here, Ethan.
No,
Come
Ravi.
on, don't chase the pine needles.
His name is Ravi Funk. After Nate Funk and Ethan Ravi. Coming up next.
Ethan Nate.
We've got Supernovas associate head coach Laura Kuhn here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Live on on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube.
We are live on Hurrdat Sports Radio, though, if you wanted to repeat that.
We are, for the 8th time in 30 seconds. We are efforting Laura Kuhn, the associate head coach for the Omaha Supernovas. But while we wait to talk to Coach, I want to remind you about the Team Jack Foundation. They're currently funding 13 projects and collaborating with national institutes, some of the biggest names in cancer research: Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, Columbia University, and more. They've raised over $12 million to date and counting. Well, why? Why are they doing all this? Because the treatments currently used for fighting childhood brain cancer are decades old and can be highly toxic to the child. Even if a child survives the brain tumor, they're left with often lifelong issues because of the treatments themselves. The goal is to find better treatments and one day a cure for this terrible disease. One of the largest projects Team Jack has been working with to date has been with University of Nebraska Medical Center and the creation of a Nebraska childhood brain tumor program. If you want to get involved with Team Jack, go to teamjackfoundation.org. That is teamjackfoundation.org. You can donate, you can find their events, you can get involved in many different ways. That's the Team Jack Foundation. All right, joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is Omaha Supernovas Associate Head Coach Laura Kuhn. Coach, how are you this morning?
Hi there. Good morning. I'm great. How are you guys doing?
Good.
We're doing great. We appreciate you joining us this morning. Just a couple days removed now from that opener on Wednesday. You've had a little bit of time to reflect, kind of decompress. How are you processing that experience with the over 11,000 people that showed up for the Supernovas debut?
It's been amazing. I mean, even that night, I think there was such a build-up, and it's so awesome for our sport. Volleyball's been so good to all of us, whether we've been an athlete or a coach, even the opportunities for just building this franchise here in Omaha. I mean, it's such a special time, and that event was great. I mean, I think it absolutely exceeded all expectations. So we're so grateful and thankful for everyone here. We knew Nebraska was going to be a special place, but that environment and that atmosphere was so electric. And I mean, it was a Wednesday night. I think that's what got me. I've coached for almost 20 years. It was a Wednesday night. That place was a great crowd, packed with energy, and they stayed the whole match. I mean, that's the thing. It wasn't like people just showed out and showed up and the match started. It was all 5 sets to the last point, and everyone was there. That's what made it special. I mean, it's a school night. That's what happens on weekdays. People probably go to matches, go to events, and then they leave. Nope, not here, not in Omaha. So that's something that we reflected on as a team and as a staff for sure. Just that support, and it was every point of the match. So that was very special.
Coach, as you were heading into that first match, did you have an idea of how that crowd was going to be? And if so, do you think kind of debuting the Pro Volleyball Federation, was there any nerves involved on your guys' side, as this was kind of a big deal and you guys were kicking it all off?
Oh, this is one of the things none of them started a pro volleyball league, let alone just like any new adventure that you're on, even a business. You kind of have a feeling, okay, we sold this many tickets. Oh, we're expecting maybe this many, maybe 10,000, whatever. But you don't really know until you're in it. And it was the same for the athletes. I even talked to a couple of players from the other team. It was like, okay, how were you guys feeling? Like, when did it hit you? But this was real and all of that. But it's like when you walk in the gym and you are just seeing and feeling that the vibe and the energy of the people, it's cool because you don't know. Like you're walking into something unknown and you think you have an idea. And I even talked to some of the players about, did it feel like a college match? Like, what did it take you back to? Because they've played internationally. Some of them have played for the last how many years out of college. And they're like, no, it wasn't even college. It was just this unique, like, oh my gosh, almost surreal. Because you're with all of these great players, playing against them, playing with them on the same side. But the atmosphere and the environment, it wasn't college, and it wasn't a Final Four because the fans were genuinely like on our side. So it was just a really cool dynamic and experience to have for the athletes, let alone just all of us involved and our great production crew and everyone that put so much time into that first event. I mean, it was just cool for our sport, but this community and our fans and our support. I mean, it took everybody, and that's what made it so special.
Coach, early on in that match, it seemed the team struggled to get into a rhythm, which caused them to look maybe less polished than the vibe. What caught your eye in the first 2 sets, and then what was said to spark a response in sets 3 and 4?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot. I think there was a lot of the emotion and the build-up started, like just having the opening match and all of that. But I think our team, they're very they are a veteran team. And so the one thing that we've always appreciated about them while we've been in training camp and working with them, they don't really get rattled. And so those first 2 sets were pretty close, and there was 2 points here and there. And yeah, we needed to play cleaner. There were things that we needed to clean up, but they never had a response where they weren't in control. And even the end of the match, like we fought back, we obviously came out, and it was them. It's their speed. We don't really have some cliche or keywords that we give. I think it is the communication and the trust that they've built within each other to be able to demand and know that they can do better. And there is more to give, there is more to execute. And so it was cool to see their response coming out in that third and fourth, even into the fifth. I mean, we were down, and then Betty goes on the serving run. There's just this innate confidence about them, and we just needed to finish. So we had the opportunity. We put ourselves in the position to finish, and I full well know they believe that we will finish and we'll get there.
We're talking with Omaha Supernovas assistant coach Laura Kuhn. Coach, I know that you've had a lot of coaching experience, whether your time at Texas A&M or Kansas, or going back to your playing days at Georgia Tech. How familiar with you before you came here with what the Nebraska volleyball scene was like?
Oh, very. I mean, I coached 7 years at Kansas, but also at Georgia Tech, we played at Nebraska. So we played in the old Coliseum back in, I think it was 2004 in preseason, and we beat them. And they were like number 4 in the country at the time. So my roots go back pretty far just to my experiences here. But it's a special place. Like, Nebraska is volleyball, and it is kind of a mecca. And that's one of the reasons why, even when Shelton and I talked about this, it was a no-brainer to come here and kind of build this pro league from the center of what is kind of the home for our volleyball and this sport. And now there's many pockets, and there's a lot of love for the sport all over the country. But it is cool, all of the things that have happened in the last year here in this region, in this state. And I mean, it showed. It showed on Wednesday night. That was an awesome opening event for the PVF, and I'm proud to be a part of it. And we're only going to keep growing this game and giving athletes and coaches and just everyone that has been involved with this sport opportunities.
Coach, quickly here before we let you go, this city is so used to winning. This state, I guess I should say, is so used to winning, especially in volleyball. You mentioned that this team will finish. They'll get there. But what is your message to the fans to kind of go one step further with how you spoke about the finish in that opening match?
I think our community and our fans will feel it. I mean, we've done a couple of handful events, but as they keep coming out to the gym and they learn the personality of these players and us as a team, they already bought in. Like, I talked to my friends and some coaches that were in the stands, and they said it was so cool to be at the first event. And these fans are saying, we need to do this. We need to do that. So the buy-in is there. They'll feel it. And they'll get to know our team. I'm sure in the autograph session, they've connected with more of the players. It is a bond between the athletes and the fans. But as they watch us play, we always talk about the personalities that they play with. People will feel that. So they'll see it. They'll sense it.
That is Omaha Supernovas assistant coach, Laura Kuhn. Laura, thank you so much for your time, and we will hopefully see you a week from tomorrow.
Yes, thank you guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Coach.
That is Coach Laura Kuhn of the Omaha Supernovas. Coming up next, we're going to talk a little football with Brad Spielberger of PFF. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. We are live on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are joined now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline by Brad Spielberger. He is an analyst for PFF, the leading analytics firm for all things football. Brad, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Good, Brad. Thanks for joining us.
We are doing well. Brad, I got to ask you before we get into kind of what's going on this weekend, how does one become a salary cap analyst?
Yeah, that's a fair question. So I was an econ guy in college and then went to law school and went to Tulane down in New Orleans, which is kind of a breeding ground for salary cap and contract people in all sports leagues, but in particular the NFL. Mike Tannenbaum went there and has kind of built out this incubator for people that work on the, financial administrative side of football. So, fell in love with that, dove into that more and more. And one thing led to another, and here we are. That's
actually super interesting because I did know that Tulane had kind of this weird niche in the sports law universe. So that's very cool. Brad, as we kind of look at I know we've got the big conference championship games this weekend, but I kind of wanted to look at some of the jobs that had been filled over the last week or so. I know people talk a lot about, the Chargers, for instance. They've got a lot of talent, but they're sort of in, they use the term salary cap hell all the time. When you look at some of these rosters, I guess, first of all, is it kind of comical to you when people talk about the salary cap and they don't actually know what they're talking about? And also, is the Chargers situation financially as dire as some people want to paint it out for Jim Harbaugh taking over?
So I definitely don't want to gatekeep talking about the salary cap. I honestly love there's more growth and a knowledge base and understanding, and people do try to dive in more and understand the nuance. But yeah, at that time, I think the hardest part, yeah, right. I try to start it with a nice opening and then pivot. It's tough though because even, and this is also not a knock, but even the major national reporters will just put out incorrect information. So I get that I have a tag for PFF and whatever. But when I'm refuting what Adam Schefter says, I understand people are like, why would we trust this guy? But no, he doesn't. Sometimes he puts out incorrect stuff. So anyway, I think there's been a ton of growth there. I think it's cool to see, and I think people are getting more knowledgeable in the space. And the Chargers one is correct. The Chargers situation is as bad as it gets. And obviously, if you have a franchise quarterback like Justin Herbert, you can fix things pretty quickly. We saw Jim Harbaugh step into the 49ers situation, kind of tear down the roster early on, and of course, build it back up to great things. So, but yeah, they have $30+ million cap hits for Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams. I know those guys are talented players, but older guys have dealt with injury. It is going to be, I think, 1 year tear down and then try to be really competitive again in 2025.
Brad, I want to talk a little bit about some of these coaching hires too, because the one in Carolina really intrigued me in Dave Canales, because they brought him in because his ability to get the best out of the quarterback there. And now he did that with Baker this season, who'd likely be comeback player of the year if it weren't for DeMar Hamlin's return. He's done it with Geno. He's done it with Russ too in their best career seasons in Seattle. But that's only part of the problem in Carolina, right? Of course, developing Bryce Young is maybe the most important element. But for this team to win, a lot more restructuring needs to be done. Are you a Canales believer?
Yeah, so it's funny. This ties into the first question, too, where I think this Carolina opening is one of the worst in a very, very long time. No, obviously, first overall pick. They also do not have a very good cap situation. And the difference is they don't have talent. There's obviously having a big cap hit for Joey Bosa is a challenge, but you still have Joey Bosa. So anyway, I am a Canales believer. What he did through the course of the year I thought was really, really fascinating. The early season, you saw him kind of have the handcuffs on Baker Mayfield. They were run, pass a ton. And you saw over the course of the year, though, the belief and the growth came. They led the league in play action rate. They did a lot of things to make Baker Mayfield's life way, way easier. And the biggest thing for me, we've seen with Canales now in Seattle and Tampa, is the average time to throw for Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield came way down. Their pressure to sack rate came way down. And so even if maybe you're not hitting all the explosives, all the positives, you're just avoiding so many negatives, setting yourself up in, 2nd and 17, 3rd and 15, stuff like that. And then you saw in December and through the playoffs, they actually cranked their pass rate way up. They were taking shots. They were trying to hit explosives to Mike Evans, which obviously worked. Against Detroit at the end there, Philadelphia, they were dominant in that game on offense. So I am a huge believer. I know he only called plays for 1 year. I get that, but, was in Seattle for a very long time, worked with the new GM in Carolina, Dan Morgan, in Seattle for about 8 years. There's a connection there. And I think if you were trying to say, hey, who's the hire that can fix Bryce Young, get him back on track, it's kind of hard to argue that Canales wouldn't be at or near the top of that list.
We're talking with Brad Spielberger. He is the salary cap analyst at PFF. Brad, as we look at the teams that are left in the conference championships this weekend, who do you look at as has done the best job in terms of roster building for long-term success? I know that when you start paying, you start talking about those big cap hits, whether it's a Patrick Mahomes, you've got the high dollar quarterbacks, right? Things start to get really challenging, Lamar Jackson's new deal. And then you've got a guy like Brock Purdy, who's, still on a basically a league minimum, right? Who have you been the most impressed with in the way they put their roster together and for the long term, not just for kind of a one shot at this?
Yeah, so this should be very, very scary for NFL fans everywhere that they get sick of, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. They are one of those answers right at the top of that list, where they make the tough decisions. You go ahead and you trade a Tyreek Hill, obviously still a dynamic player, maybe the best receiver in all of football, but you save a ton of money. You don't give out the biggest contract at the position in the league. You get an extra first-round pick, which turned into George Karlaftis, who's a very good edge defender. The other first-round pick was Trent McDuffie in that class, already, a Pro Bowler or All-Pro corner. Those are the decisions that the good teams that can sustain success. Like we saw that in New England. We always talk about Tom Brady, and they also traded Chandler Jones and let guys walk, like really talented players. They let them leave because it's just really hard. Further example, Charvarius Ward, I think, was a Pro Bowler for the Niners this year. Very good corner. But the Chiefs said, you know what? We're going to draft L'Jarius Sneed in the 4th round and a bunch of other corners. We're going to let Charvarius Ward walk. Oh, and here we are. L'Jarius Sneed might be a better player than Charvarius Ward and is a really, really good talent. So they are no question at the top of that list. And then Baltimore, too. So the Ravens have always been really well run. I think Ozzie Newsome, their former GM, who was Eric DeCosta, the current GM's mentor, he might be the best GM of all time. I think if I had to rank him, I might put him in that number 1 spot. And DeCosta's approached it the same way. So other examples, you trade a Marquise Brown, the wide receiver, to Arizona. You get Tyler Linderbaum at center with that first-round pick, already one of the best centers in football. You trade Orlando Brown, the tackle they had for a while. He goes elsewhere. You use those picks to get good young talent. And so they do have a lot of expensive players. Both of them do, but they're not in, quote unquote cap hell, and they have draft resources and they have a lot of good young players. That's why they're going to be in these games, for a long time coming.
Brad, last thing from me here. Got about 2.5 minutes left. You mentioned the Patriots, and it had me thinking about Bill Belichick. And, everything I heard and everything I've read with that Raheem Morris hire is the overall consensus is he's worthy to hold that position and should have a lot of success doing so. But knowing Belichick was linked to this job, it makes this move seem like a surprising one to go with Morris over Belichick just based on what we know. In any interview process, I wouldn't want to be the guy going up against the GOAT of coaching, but there's obviously something there the Falcons didn't like or wanted to try out with Morris over Bill. What do you think were some of the reasons that led to Raheem being the guy over Belichick?
Yeah, so first I'll start with Belichick and maybe why he's getting frozen out, is that he comes from a philosophy of the head coach runs everything and has final say over the 53-man roster and it essentially is in charge of personnel as well as coaching. And again, he did it at a high level for 20 years. It did fall off the last couple. Andy Reid is in that bucket, and you can't really argue with what Andy Reid is doing. But I think we are seeing a shift across the NFL now to wanting to truly empower the personnel people, the general manager, to have that final say. Of course, you still want a lot of influence from the head coach. You are building his roster. You got to get players that he wants to work with and views as fits. But I think that is, you're going to see that this shift across the league to more and more teams truly wanting, a two-headed monster at the top. And my perception is Bill Belichick just doesn't want to do that. And I think he has every right to not want to. So that is, I think, what all it comes down to. He wanted to run the show, and Atlanta is more interested in this kind of dynamic approach. So pivoting to Raheem Morris, you cannot find a person in the NFL that has ever met Raheem Morris that has a bad thing to say about him. I think it's funny people talk about his tenure in Tampa Bay when he was the head coach, didn't go great. He was 33 years old, took over a aging post-Super Bowl team that had a lot of old talent. It was not a good team. And he went 10-6 with Josh Freeman at quarterback, who basically played like 4 years in the NFL. If anything, I'm taking away from that is that this guy got a head coaching job at 33, won 10 games with a guy who didn't play after that. And so it's super deserving. The Rams this year did not have a lot of talent on defense. You saw breakout rookie years from Kobe Turner and Byron Young on the defensive line. All that he's done in LA since he got there, won a Super Bowl, and has now helped this transition. I think it was a great hire.
That's Brad Spielberger from PFF. Brad, thank you so much for your time, and enjoy Conference Championship weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks, Brad.
That's Brad Spielberger of PFF. He's their salary cap analyst. Good stuff there from Brad. Coming up next, we've got Mike Sautter of Hurrdat Sports Own chief basketball analyst here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back to kickoff hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me.
What up?
We are joined now by our friend and colleague, Mike Sautter of Hurrdat Sports.
Yeah.
Everything.
Sure.
What's up, dude?
Not much.
Senior basketball analyst, as it says on his Twitter
Not
profile.
much. Not much. Just out here.
You just out here. Where were you? Where have you been this week?
Dream.
Where have you been bopping around to this week?
Last night you were at a pretty good
Last
one.
night was Bell West in prep.
Okay. How was that?
It was actually pretty good. Jaden Cascio Jensen went 8 for 10 from 3 for Bell West.
That's good.
It's decent.
That's a good percentage.
Yeah.
You'll take that.
Pretty good. And yeah, and 7 of 7 in the first half.
Also good.
Yeah. So, but prep actually like hung in there. They didn't play great. Prep didn't, I don't think. But you know, Bellevue West has won a handful, you know, of games here, and clearly the number 1 team right now. I think it's clear them or Millard North. Feels like a collision course at this point for both of them. But Bell West has a tough one tomorrow at Kearney. So just because that gym is crazy. And I will be there in Kearney tomorrow night.
Oh, good for you.
Won my game of the week by a lot.
There you go.
There was a lot of votes. like
Talking tens of thousands?
Yeah. We're talking about just that one game, just the Kearney Bell West game, had over 18,000 votes.
Wow.
Jeez.
People want you there.
Yeah.
They want to see Mike Sautter at all.
I haven't been to a Kearney home game in a while.
In our friends.
Well, that's what they said. That's why they voted like they did.
Yeah, they need to see Mike Sautter out in central Nebraska.
Now,
like that, I mean, the gym is it's like a pit. And it's all 4 sides.
Oh, that's cool.
So, and it gets loud. And the last time, the last 2 road trips Bellevue West took to Kearney, they won on game winners.
Ooh.
Bell West did. Like a Chucky game winner, deep 3. Then Robbie Garcia tipped one in 2 years ago. So, like, there's something.
Historically, this has been a close match.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure the gym will be rocking tomorrow. That Kearney home court, it is. Unless prep is like full throat with the student section and all that, Kearney's got the best home court in the state.
Now tell me this, because you had mentioned that it's kind of like Bell West, Millard North are kind of like the 2
feel like they're
dominant teams
separating.
in A. Right. And so like the way we talk about college basketball a little bit is it's UConn and Purdue in the top 25, and then like 3 through 12 could be interchangeable at any point in time. So you talk about them separating. Is if it wasn't a separation, would you like go as far as like 6 in the rankings?
Yeah,
you
have.
As 8?
Yeah, I mean, there's like this 6, 7 kind of number all year that you can make a case for any one of those. West Side's in that conversation, Prep's in that conversation, Gretna's in that conversation. Papio South, not fully healthy right now, which will be really tough because they lost their point guard, Reese Kircher, who was having a nice year. So they were in that conversation. You know, it's been those kind of 6-ish, 7-ish teams. And now, though, it looks like the 2 are kind of stretching a little bit because, you know, Tuesday, Westside played Millard North, and Millard North went to Westside and won by 20. So it's like, and Westside's 4th in our coaches poll, and Millard North's 2. So like it feels like feels like we're gonna get another Millard North Bellevue West final for the 700th year in a row or something. But
much different cast of characters this year, though.
Yeah, at least for one more
past.
year.
Yeah,
it feels that way. But we'll see. I don't know. Again, Prep didn't play great last night, but they only lost by 12, 13. And that took, you know, a dude going 8 of 10 from 3 and scoring 26. So, but yeah, to really answer your question, I still feel like it is those only those like
Those two and then the rest of them.
Well,
those
that
six and the rest of them.
six-ish that you can say, oh, we're gonna win it. We're getting down to the point now where there's a month left or so, a little less than that of this season, and people are fighting for some wild card positioning, and getting home court in districts is important. So yeah, we're in that kind of vein right now.
Do you look at any of those teams in the top 6 that are maybe battling some injuries that if they got healthy, like to the eye, they could be that so-called, I'm going to use this term loosely because they're a top 6 team in the state, sleeper team when playoffs roll around?
Yeah. Maybe Omaha North is in that mix. That's like a sleeper. They're healthy, but like they've been playing pretty well. I mean, they're not losing a lot of games. Before this week, they're 9-2, one bad loss, but they've been playing pretty well. And Central, Omaha Central is 3rd in our coaches poll, like they're top 5, and like they still aren't talked about. I didn't just now. So like
the only team we haven't talked about.
Yeah, they're scary because Delron Thomas has had a terrific year for them at point guard. He came over from Omaha North, and they have like Devin Holman's a guy, and Deshaun Sean has done really well for them. And they have like they're tough, physical, stereotypical Bruce Chubbuck teams that will guard the crap out of you and score just enough. Like they're comfortable if it's in the 50s or low 60s. I mean, they've had some really good wins. They beat Miller North. So
they smacked Miller North.
Yeah, it's one of those teams that can be really, really scary. But this group of Central, I mean, obviously historically Central has gone through some wars and won a lot, but this group hasn't. So when it gets to the end of the year, is it going to tighten up? I mean, players wise, the coaching staff clearly has like they've been through everything. So, but that's also a team that I think is getting a little overlooked. They host Scott tonight. Scott goes to Central, and Scott has a tough week. They lost to Pius on Tuesday, and then go to Central tonight. I'll be there for that tonight. The girls' game has a chance to be pretty good too. So I'm going to go to both of those tonight.
Speaking of Class B, you mentioned Scott, number 5, right? In your 4 in the last coaches poll. You've got the kind of top of the class there. Where is the separating line in Class B, if there is one?
Yeah, well, Crete is
the separating line in their own class
right now. Yeah, they're just smacking people. So
where's the next step then? After
like Crete beat Elkhorn, who's 3rd, by 20 last week. So yeah,
and it didn't seem fluky.
Yeah, no, they're really good.
An accurate result.
McDowell's a really nice player for them. So them, Norris, Elkhorn, Scott, that's probably one of those 4 you could make a case. Elkhorn had a game winner last night against Bennington to beat Bennington at Elkhorn. So Bennington's kind of maybe coming on a little bit too, but 2 top 10 teams. B's real gets real dicey after about 9. Like Gretna East and Waverly they're like 4 and 8, like 8 that they've like 4 wins each, and they're getting receiving votes or 10th or whatever. They keep
very
flipping.
top heavy.
Yeah, in B it's really it's not great. Yeah, the depth of teams is not great.
Outside of the games that you mentioned that you're going to this week, what are some of the marquee matchups if people want to go around either the Metro or Lincoln this weekend?
Well, that's a great question, Ravi, Lulla.
Thanks, Mike Sautter.
I put together, a plan every week.
I love how he says that because that's his like buy time response.
Yeah. But tomorrow there's one. Lutheran High Northeast hosts Humphrey St. Francis, a C2, D2, 2 ranked teams up in Norfolk. The Trailblazer Conference Championships.
Okay.
Which it's conference tournament season right now. The girls and boys are tomorrow. at Wahoo, and the boys' game is a rematch of Wahoo Ashland Greenwood, which is going to be pretty good. About 5:30, I think. Yeah,
first one went to OT, right?
Yeah. So, and they are very familiar with each other, and two, the best teams in C1. Those two play each other. It's a rivalry. All that. I mean, it's definitely a rivalry right now. So that's a thing. And then the girls is, I believe, Malcolm and Hallie Dolliver, which if you should definitely watch.
You should know her name.
Yeah, you should definitely watch her. Just athlete, anything. She's a really good volleyball player too. They play Beatrice. So, and they're playing with a shot clock this tournament. So Class C doesn't have shot clock right now, but for this tournament, the Trailblazer Conference decided to play with one for just these games. So it's kind of different, neat, whatever you want to say about it.
Those lower classes still anti-shot clock?
No, it's
coming, right?
Kind of. Not officially, but it passed the district meetings. So the NSA, there's steps in order to get things. So it has to pass the district meetings, and there's 6 districts throughout the state, and only one of those districts didn't pass or didn't vote to move on the proposal that would be Class C, all of Class C, C1, C2, and D1, D2 next year. So they thought it would, we thought like a couple years, once A gets it, and then B, and then trickle down like slowly. Well, now it's like boom, like
we're doing this.
It's probably,
what was the one district?
District 5, South West, like McCook area, back over in that kind of vein over there. Grant, or not Grant anymore. Like Imperial, Grant, McCook.
Now, I don't know my district
Cambridge.
well, but I know that like Auburn is a team stylistically that like would be better.
That's
without
not
a
true.
Shot clock. You
That's
don't think
true.
so?
Yeah.
I mean, because like they're very good at moving their offense and playing defensive
everyone
basketball.
just says that because
well, I don't just say it. I know stylistically what they
everyone
are.
always throws Auburn into the shot clock conversation. And I've had this conversation with Jim Weeks before, their head coach, multiple times. And he's like, I don't care. I'll play the shot clock. It's fine. Like, it doesn't bother us at all. What Auburn is very good at is defending you and making you not get quick, easy buckets. So their scores are low because they guard the crap out of you.
You're talking about opponents don't want the shot clock.
No, people always say, "Oh, Auburn, whatever," and it's primarily because like their defensive possessions are so long because they guard you for so long and really hard that throws a score down. Like then it just tightens things up. Also, hey, yes, if there's 55 seconds on the clock to end the quarter, Jim Weeks is holding that ball.
Absolutely,
yeah, no question. He's doing
he
that.
plays to the game,
right?
Like I'm not saying
I'll say most
I'm not
high school
saying
coaches
that
will.
that Auburn wouldn't adjust.
No, that'd be fine.
I'm saying that the way they play right now favors not having a shot clock, but that's not to say
they're
that
also
if there was a
undefeated
shot
this year.
clock that he wouldn't also play to the style of the shot clock.
He's not scared of it at all.
Also, you wonder, like as you mentioned with their defensive possessions, that like maybe a shot clock actually benefits them because they only have to defend for 35
versus
whatever
seconds.
Yeah, instead of defending for a minute and a half. Teams just pop.
So
around.
I will say this: to the Auburn deal, it was last year or the year before. It was a huge deal, right? Because they won a semifinal game or something. They won a state tournament game, and it was like 31-29 or something. Like it was crazy, just low. It was
a football score.
Yeah, and it was like we are a very long possession, like that game. But even their next game, it was still really low scoring. Like I don't think anyone got 40. But for that game, I tracked the possession time, and it was like 32 seconds, both teams.
Yeah.
So on average.
Yeah. So you're in the neighborhood of.
A lot of it has to do with, hey, kids need to just make a shot. like maybe we get, maybe we get better. I don't know. So that is something.
Maybe get better.
Yeah.
Mike Sautter hot take. Hey, maybe just make a shot.
Yeah, just make a shot. Like, just get better.
We didn't have trouble making shots. Rink Mass the other day.
Yeah, that was all.
Yeah,
that was fun.
He was burying shots.
Okay, people talk about the step back, but if you watch the whole play, and I tweeted it like right as it happened. If you watch the whole play, yes, it was a step back 3 that he made from the wing, but the shot fake and then left hand one dribble, and the dude recovers and the step back to go with the shot fake was probably a little more.
You're telling me 6'10" guys don't do that often?
Not guys built. There are 6'10" guys that do that, but not like built like him.
I'll say Rink Mast has about 50 pounds on the 6'10" guys that usually do that.
With the foot speed of Rink Mast, they don't do that. But it was so kind of cool to see. I mean, everyone at one point I just started laughing because I'm like, oh my gosh, this dude is killing it. So it was nice to see him rink back and like feeling a little healthier. And that's even Coach Hoiberg after the game said they do jump testing stuff and his numbers have been drastically improving since the knee procedure, I think is the word that clean up. How about that? So, and to be kind of frank, I think it's known now he had they cleaned up a little bit of scar tissue in his knee in that little break. Like he missed those 2 games that they didn't need him to play, but they cleaned up scar tissue from an old ACL injury that he had like in 2019. So that's what it was bothering him. And he's playing pretty well. They're playing well. Other teams keep winning, like Oregon State beating Arizona last night certainly doesn't hurt.
That helps Nebraska's cause a bit.
Yeah, 47th in the net right now. So Kim Palm has him like 45. So top 50.
What's Oregon State?
Oh, I don't know.
Not good. I'll bring it up.
I'm really curious to know how low Oregon State.
No, they're not great. So,
but they're still 10-9.
Yeah,
like they're not a good team as we saw. Nebraska.
Oregon State is 157.
Yeah, that's
not good. And they beat Arizona. So yeah, it's this. They got to find a road win somewhere in Nebraska.
It's got to be now. It's got to be this weekend.
It's tough though, man.
Maryland though, like Arizona, of all teams,
Maryland just beat Iowa at Iowa.
Yeah, but of all teams, it has to be Maryland. This team needs to take advantage of the ones that are
probably get at Northwestern,
in the bottom of the conference standings.
Yeah, I mean,
Northwestern's winnable.
Maybe like Northwestern's still a really good team. Who did they just beat in OT?
They beat Illinois.
Yeah.
Northwestern has beaten
Illinois and Purdue.
Illinois and Purdue.
Right.
The 2 best teams in the league.
But obviously that's a game Nebraska won at home. So you figure, okay, they're at least
the road
going to be in it on the road. I know it's a different deal. They're not going to at Illinois. I'd be shocked if they win, obviously. Then
Wisconsin at home is a big one.
At Indiana, at Ohio State, at Michigan. So they've got opportunities against teams that are good, but not the very, very top of the conference. But they are going to have to get, Maryland's certainly one of those opportunities to be able to get a road win. And they have to win a road game at some point, right?
Find one somewhere.
Like if for no other reason to say you did, right?
Yeah.
Even if the resume would be strong enough without it, let's say they win. If they win out at home, that would include a nice win against a Wisconsin team. Your resume is probably strong enough without it, but you're looking at, hey, they've won 0 road games in conference. That's a red flag.
Well, and at what point nationally are people looking at Nebraska and saying like this isn't a tournament team? Like
if you can't win a road game,
but like at what point in the season do you say that? Say they lose to Maryland. And then you get to what were the other 3? You said Illinois, Michigan, Northwestern.
So Illinois, Northwestern, Indiana, Ohio State, Michigan.
So you have a good grouping of 5 there. At what point do you say like,
At Indiana is another one you see.
Yeah.
Is that the point in the season though? Like where people are
when it
say
gets
that?
down closer there, when you're looking resume stuff, as long as they can protect home court, like that Wisconsin game would be big if they can get that one.
If they don't win a road game, they almost have to win that Wisconsin game.
They have to protect home court.
Yeah,
like they'd have to.
Like if they drop that Wisconsin game, then the road games become even that much more important.
The deal is you can't, like if you're 9-11 in this Big Ten, might be tough.
That's a little bit of a tougher shell. This isn't the juggernaut Big Ten. It's very solid.
10 and 10.
It just depends on how far you go in the tournament. Like, do you win a tournament game or are you knocked out?
Well,
in the
I'm
first
just saying
round?
the regular season. Yeah, I mean, if you're 10-10,
you're probably fine.
You're fine. If you're 9-11, now you're getting dicey.
Yeah, especially
the 2 losses that you had.
Yeah, Rutgers and Minnesota are not great losses.
Yeah. Well,
that's
Minnesota's playing a little better, but
still, that's. I mean,
the way they lost that game, though, you got to look at that. And the same way with Rutgers when you blow the lead.
Minnesota's,
comfortable.
That's what I'm saying.
5 minutes left. Yeah,
88 in Ken Palm. It's not terrible, but in conference, it's not a great loss.
Right. Yeah. It's something where I see mocks right now, they're 10th and right around there, and I feel like that's probably about right. Anywhere from. Could they sneak up to an 8 seed? But would you rather be in a 7-10 game or 8-9 game? I always say that. I'd rather be the 10.
7-10.
Yeah. Because you can win, your odds of winning the second one are a little better.
Yeah. It's
so
easier to win against the 2 seed in the second round than it is the 1 seed.
That's
although nowadays the 1 seeds just get taken out by 16. So.
Listen, man, the only thing to just get the one tournament win. And here's my other kind of question on Nebraska basketball and tournament stuff is, are we, if they do end up in Dayton in a play-in or something, which I don't right now, it doesn't look.
Are we counting that as their one tournament
win? It has
win?
to.
I mean, that's
a tournament.
They
win.
count it. I mean,
the NCAA tournament.
I believe you get a tournament share for it.
You do.
So
it's all right. They're not just going to win that.
If you get a share of the money,
it counts.
It counts.
That counts as a win.
100% counts.
Yeah.
So, Yeah,
it's not.
I'm hoping they don't go to Dayton,
because you don't want to go to Dayton.
Well, the problem with the Dayton thing is, let's say they play in Dayton on Tuesday or Wednesday, right?
Yeah, where do they go after?
And then if they win that game,
it's a super short turnaround.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
you're going from Tuesday to Thursday. You basically have to get somewhere.
I'm going to Dayton, and then you're booking a flight
that night
immediately.
Yeah.
Once the
buzzer sounds,
or you're having one booked and then you just cancel the flight.
I mean, you're scramble mode
because you know where they're going.
It's you know where they would go by.
You're scramble mode to get to Salt Lake City or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And
that's not a drive.
Yeah,
hop in a car and go.
Yeah,
18 short hours to Salt Lake City.
You're going from Dayton to Charlotte. You could drive that.
Dayton to Charlotte wouldn't be terrible. It's probably 10.
I'm not driving to Dayton either. So I just look at for me personally, very much so selfishly, I'm like, I don't want to do that. So you pack for 2 days, but you pack for a week, but you might only need 2 days. It's let's just not.
Yeah,
do that.
Are we bringing the overseas suitcase or are we bringing the carry-on?
Right,
that's what we need to know here.
Luckily, I got a carry-on that's big enough where I can throw some stuff in there. But anyway, the Maryland game, one kind of thing. I mean, Jameer Young is really
He's
good.
a beast.
I don't know how they're going to have to stop him. And Nebraska is averaging 78.5 points a game, and Maryland is averaging 70.2 points a game. So if it gets to that 80 mark, which is very important for Nebraska, they are 24-5 under Fred Hoiberg when they score 80.
Isn't that 20 points more than the season average Maryland's given up to?
Yeah.
If they get to 80, they're winning.
Easily. Yeah, by 15.
Right.
That's Mike Sautter, chief basketball correspondent, senior basketball analyst.
Yeah, we'll have a new one for you next week.
Basketball CEO of Hurrdat Sports. We've got more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio here on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. Joining us now is the president of not only your Omaha Storm Chasers, but also Union Omaha, our friend Martie Cordaro. Martie, on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline, how are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm great. I'm great. It's been a whirlwind week, quite honestly, prepping for yesterday, but the last 24 hours have been a real momentous period for our franchise, and a lot of good things happening. You guys doing well this morning?
Oh yeah, always. I can't imagine not doing great though on your end, based on how everything has kind of transpired over the last 24 hours. You get to give that press conference yesterday, and I'm sure. I mean, it was a long time coming for you. I mean, this has been in the works for you for at least a year's time. I remember picking up on this stadium development project last season. And I want to think, I think I asked Coach about it, and he's like, you got to talk more to Martie about that. And here it is. We get to do it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that interview.
Martie, I'm curious, obviously things like this are in the works for a while. What were some of the reasons that you decided hey, or as an organization, it was decided, hey, we really want to have a dedicated soccer facility? Obviously, I'm sure there's some challenges of playing soccer on a baseball field, but what are some of the opportunities that you've outlined in being able to have a dedicated soccer stadium, although it is kind of a mixed use entertainment district?
Yeah, it's a soccer specific facility that will be able to play field sports and have a number of other special events, rallies, community events, walks, 5Ks, maybe even high school football, 7-on-7, combines, whatever. I mean, we've talked and considered a number of things. But the stadium will be part, of the development. It's not going to be the development. It'll be part of the development. Will it be the centerpiece? Sure. Yeah. I mean, and things will, flow around it. But to answer your question, in 2020, we quickly realized that for the long-term viability of pro soccer here in the metro area, it wasn't in a baseball specific stadium that was retrofitted for soccer that we would really, we had to have a soccer specific stadium. And there are a number of reasons for that: cost of the field flip, lack of permanent signage, lack of great sight lines. I mean, I can go on and on and on. It's a list, it's 19 or 20, 21 reasons why that are business reasons. And then when you look at the younger demographic of soccer, you look at the 15 to 35-year-olds now that are truly going to be following soccer and having more people follow soccer over the next 20 years as it continues to be a silver bullet in the sports landscape here in the States. 2020, 2021 is when we really started to say, hey, this is what will have to happen for long-term viability. So we hired CSL in April of 21 to do a feasibility study. We got the report back in fall of 21, and it told us geographically where a stadium should be properly positioned in the metro, how many seats and different types of amenities. But above all, the first thing it told us was, yes, Omaha is vibrant enough, viable enough, has the right demographic to support another sports facility, because yes, it is another entertainment venue in town. When you look at all the concert venue that just recently opened at City Center, and you have Stillhouse, and forget sports venues, and then the Gene Leahy Mall, everything that's happened. But isn't that what we want?
Yeah.
As a community, we want to be known as, wow, Omaha has all of this. You're damn right. That's where we want to live, and we want our kids to grow up, and that's where Gary Green has really put his money where his mouth is. He's adopted Omaha as a second city. He's a New Yorker that bought a minor league baseball team in 2012 from Warren Buffett and other investors, and he fell in love with the city. It was a baseball investment, and now this really is for economic reasons, from a standpoint of trying to move the city forward. And there are other cities that have this. Why not Omaha? So that was our take on it, and we've been hard at work on it, as I said, since April of 21, and we've had some start stops, but here we are now, and we're really excited about what is going to happen just south of Abbott, just east of Lot D at CHI Health Arena, and it's going to be great. 2026 can't get here soon enough.
We're talking with Martie Cordaro, president of Union Omaha and the Omaha Storm Chasers. Martie, you mentioned Gary kind of adopting Omaha, and if I'm not mistaken, you're a transplant here as well. What about Omaha has made, because the way you talk about Omaha sounds like how I talk about Omaha, the kind of being passionate about developing the city and having new opportunities and things like that. What is it about the Omaha community for guys like Gary who come from a place like New York? Obviously, there's plenty to do in New York, and a guy like you who isn't necessarily from here originally, that has kind of drawn you to be so passionate about this specific community?
That's a great question. Do we have an hour?
We got about 4 minutes, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, no, I know. here, I'll tell you my story. I moved here in October 1st of 2006 was my first day on the job. And in about 30 minutes, I realized at some point in time that if I was going to be someone in this marketplace, and when I say be someone that contributes, someone that gives back, that I had to give back. And I joined the ALS Association regional board, and I could go down a list of how I became engaged in the community. So many of our community leaders, majority, really, they mean what they say out loud is how they live behind the scenes. And of course, not everyone's like that, but to me, that's what this community is about, because, we're in a state of less than 2 million people. We're in a metro of just shy of 1 million people. We do things that most communities are at 1.2 million, 1.5 million, 1.8 million. They get done because of the power of relationships and the power of people. And I think sometimes it gets lost on some here in the community, that what we do have. And of course, I'm as guilty as a lot of people of saying, well, how come we don't do this? And how come we can't change that? That's human nature. But sometimes we need to step back. And I tell you, I'm proud that my 3 boys grew up here. 2 of them still live here. And I want them to want to come back. If we can continue to provide opportunities that 15 to 35, 20 to 45-year-olds want to do, not what 60, 65, 75-year-old people think young people want to do. And that's really where this soccer project has reminded me and taught me. And that's really what this is about. When we say we want to assist, the Urban Core Initiative of 30,000 residents and 30,000 new jobs by 2042 in the downtown area, we feel this is part of that, and it's core to what that plan is. And so we haven't even talked soccer during this interview, but it's about how do we continue to keep Omaha where it is and raise the bar and raise the expectations.
Marty, got about a minute here, and I'm just kind of want to branch off of what you were saying there about giving opportunity to the younger generation. And I guess my question to you is this, because I know a lot of people here go to like cities like Kansas City to train if they want to get their soccer elevated to a certain level. Is that what this facility provides too?
That is something we would like to start, yes, is in a youth academy. And we don't know at what age, we don't know what year we're starting it. We don't have the facilities at Warner Park for that. Heck, our team doesn't even train here full time. We have 4 or 5 different off-site locations we train at. So, whether it is in this facility or this facility is collaborative in maybe another training facility somewhere in the community that our clubs would train at, is to be determined. But offering that to some degree at some level through a youth academy, a Union Omaha Youth Academy, absolutely is in our sights.
That's Martie Cordaro. He is the president not only of Union Omaha, but of the Omaha Storm Chasers as well. And that baseball season is creeping up on us a little bit quicker than we anticipate. We can't wait to see you out at Warner Park again this spring, Marty.
March 29th, first home game against the Iowa Cubs. So we look to see you guys then. And then soccer kicks off at Warner on April 20th. A lot of great things happening.
Marking the calendar.
You guys supporting local sports.
Absolutely,
Always.
Marty. We appreciate you as always. I'm sure we will catch up again soon. That is Martie Cordaro. He's the president of Union Omaha and the Omaha Storm Chasers. Coming up next, we wrap up the week with our guy, Matt Vrzal, here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up the show here on a Friday, wrapping up the week on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. I'm Ravi, Lulla, Andrew Rogers here with me. We are efforting Matt Vrzal, but until we get to that,
it'll be about a minute.
Okay, sounds good. We didn't get to a ton of NFL today. We did talk to our guy Brad Spielberger from PFF for a little while, but I wanted to take a minute and give our picks real quick on the conference championship games. Let's start with the AFC. That's the first game. Chiefs and Ravens. Ravens are 4-point favorites Where are you leading?
I actually took them at -3.5 when I had the chance because I have the Ravens at 24-20 in this game. A lot of it has to do with them being at home, but also they're just the better team with better weapons. And, I don't care that the Chiefs have Mahomes and, Mahomes is Mahomes. The Ravens have much better wins this season than the Chiefs. And the Chiefs have lost some games that have you kind of like curling up in your seat a little bit like, ooh, I don't really know if that's like a Chiefs loss in past years.
For sure. I can't get over the Mahomes factor. I just can't do it. He's kind of gotten to the place with me where I'm kind of you just don't bet against Brady. I'm not saying that I'm guaranteeing a win, but I can't bring myself to put money against the man. So I'm going to go Mahomes here and the Chiefs. I love the way their defense is playing. It seems like they found a little bit of comfort, not a ton, but a little bit of comfort with Pacheco and Kelsey and Rice on the offensive side of the ball. I agree that the Ravens are better. I agree. And I don't think there's a huge gap in talent between Lamar and Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
But I've seen Patrick Mahomes do too many things. I just can't do it.
Yeah, Isaiah Pacheco, have fun trying to run through that line.
I know,
Once
right?
you get to the second level and you have to deal with that linebacking core, good luck.
That second game, Lions and 49ers. 49ers are 7.5-point favorites. Who do you like?
I like the 49ers here, but not by 7.5.
Yeah, I don't like I said this on Monday. That's too many points.
So I have the 49ers winning this game 31-30.
Okay.
It's going to be that close.
Barn
it's going
burner.
to come down to a Jake Moody field goal, and you're going to see Brock Purdy once again
lead a
2-minute drive, get them in field goal range, and Moody's going to sink it from 44. Why? Well, he wears the number 4, and his former coach is just in the news. I think his name is Jim Harbaugh.
Who?
He also used to coach for the 49ers. When he played football, what number did he wear?
4.
4. So that's why we are kicking it from 44 yards, and the 49ers are going to win this game by 1.
I agree the 49ers are going to win. I'm nervous, obviously, because whenever your team's playing, you're nervous. I don't think they're going to win by 7.5. I said that number was too big to start the week. Here's my kind of hot take for the 49ers-Lions game. I think this is a prove-it game for Brock Purdy. He struggled last week in the rain. There was all sorts of, Purdy's not who everybody said he was. Every time he's had one of those games, he's bounced back and been like, nah, I'm pretty good. I think that's one of those games for Brock Purdy. I think the 49ers win. I don't have a score, but I think it's a redemption game from last week for Brock Purdy. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook Hotline is our guy, Matt Vrzal, former Husker, owner of Paisan's Pizzeria. Verz, how are you this morning?
Good, boys. How are we doing?
Good, man. Verz, we talked this morning about standard and being a frontline guy and owning all scenarios, even if it only affects you 1% of the whole 100. We were referencing an old speech given by Coach Rule, and that goes for players and coaches. If it only affects you 1% of the whole 100, it still affects you in some way, and you need to be a part of the solution. How have you seen that taking ownership term specifically encapsulate everything this staff and this program stands for over the last year, both on the field and out recruiting?
I mean, this isn't that's not just for sports. That's for life.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody passes the buck. Like people that go to Vegas and whine about being hungover 4 days later. Like you did that to you.
Are you talking about me?
There's no sympathy in that for anybody. You did that to you. I've got buddies texting me how soft you are, so I'm just going to take a shot.
Hey, good morning to them. That's my way of being nice and not using an expletive on the air.
Attaboy. Let it flow. Shayner's got a drop button. He's used it with me before.
Verz, no joke. I asked them what words I could say the other day, and I said, I probably shouldn't say that word, and then I ended up saying the word 2 minutes later.
Yeah.
So it happens.
It's SPMFFSOB. Yeah, just let one fly. They'll push the drop button. They're not going to fire you. I mean, it's easy. You want me to do it?
You can say anything once. No. I know you'll do it. We're good, though.
Okay. Yeah. But, yeah, it's accountability is big because you can't BS kids anymore. And that's probably why coaches that are very successful live what they preach. Like it isn't a do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. They live that way. Like Rule lives life like that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't live life like that, then you get gone. As we've seen, some things have changed behind the scenes. And they can say better opportunity. They can say step aside for whatever. No, that's you ain't leaving that job you had. You got removed. So, but that's you're setting the stage. And maybe it's what not enough coaches and people just in general understand. You're setting a standard for a kid, for a young man that's trying to figure out life. So if you live that way, he then in turn wants to live his life that way because you seem to be successful. And then you change the course of society. Like that's why people coach and teach. And the more people that when they get into those positions, instead of trying to push some weird agenda, you just live life right the way you're supposed to, you change the world.
Verz, we were talking earlier when we kind of brought this up originally about how we feel like that draws kids to Coach Rule, kind of like you were talking about, because they want to live their life that way too. But a lot of people, when they look at young people, they're like, oh, they don't want to be held accountable. They don't want this. They don't want that. But it seems like the opposite of that is true, and we're seeing it play out in Lincoln. Where do you see that disconnect of people from the outside being like, oh, kids don't want to be held accountable, but when you actually get in it, whether it's you coaching high school, whether it's Coach Rule coaching college, or you're leading a team over there at Pisons, like where do you think that disconnect occurs between what people think younger people these days want versus how they actually respond when they're given standards and accountability?
Because we're lazy. No, I'm going to say this. This is not all parents.
Mm-hmm.
So if it does not apply to you, do not take it personally. Oh, well, that's probably also the problem is the ones that it does apply to, they'll think it doesn't apply to them.
Won't take it personally.
People are lazy. Like Frank Martin has a 4-minute rant about it when he was at South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Kids don't know what they don't know. So if you go in there and you don't give them structure and you don't give them discipline, you don't give them expectation, you don't give them correction, you don't give them reward, what do they learn? Everybody worked a job, and you had a boss that's probably an ass. But what you didn't understand, and it's the thing that we do here, I'll put my hand at about my mid-chest. I'll say, this is your expectation of you. And I'll lift my arm up as high as I can, and I'll say, this is my expectation of you. So there's a difference in that. Somewhere in the middle, we're both going to be right. So let's figure out how we can do this. And everything in here is up for discussion once you master a process that has worked. So now if I teach them, do it this way, but pay attention and be aware and try to find a different way to do it that might be better. And then we'll discuss it. We might try it for a night. And if it works better, then we're going to change it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you give them expectation and they know, okay, I can't just come in here and be a slappy. He's got an expectation of me. So I now have to live up to that expectation. It's in everybody to exceed an expectation. It really is. And so now if I say, this is the structure where we're going to try to get you above this expectation, they accept it. You did great tonight. Here's an extra $20. Hey, you got to be better than you were. You know you weren't very good tonight. I can see it in your face. I know it won't happen again, but let's make sure it doesn't happen again. Okay? And then now they feel good about it. My ones that are 21. Hey, go have fun. Hey, you did a great job tonight. Here's $40 for the boys. Go out and have some fun.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like it's simple, but we want to just point finger and say, oh, they're lazy and they don't do this and they don't do that. Look at you think Jim Harbaugh's easy on those guys and they're lining up to come play. You think Nick Saban is easy on people? No, but he has an expectation of them. He gives them the parameters to achieve that expectation. If they don't achieve that expectation, they get their ass chewed. If they achieve that, they get an attaboy and a pat on the back and what can we do for you? You're doing really well. You're a big time player for us. We'd love you to play in our bowl game that to everybody else doesn't matter, but to us does.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go get a Lloyd's of London policy for you. Just in case you get hurt, you're safe. Your family and you are taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
Like life is not hard, but we make it hard because we're lazy. We don't want to nobody wants to be the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
I'll be the bad guy. The bad guy's great because in the end, everybody likes the bad guy. Like I've got kids that I coach in Malcolm that probably shouldn't talk to me from the things that I said and did just because I was a kid trying to learn how to coach and I was out of control. But I see them all the time and they'll say, hey, it was awesome. Thank you. You showed us that you cared and you showed us that we could win. All right, great. If that's all it takes, then let's do this.
Well, Verz, we could probably talk on this topic with you for about an hour, but unfortunately we are out of time. We appreciate you giving us a little insight there and spending some time with us this morning, and we will talk to you again next week.
Rogers, they make Pedialyte travel packets.
Hey, it's not even the hangover verse because, dude, I gotta tell you, I'll have to stop in the next few days and tell you about my gastritis incident. That's why I can't drink that much anymore.
Nothing like
Sounds like
talking.
an excuse.
No, my body tells me no,
but my mind is telling me yes.
So Anna, I didn't forget she was supposed to come in and have pizza too, and she didn't. So she's on the list.
We got to have a
Verz,
talk
keep
with
your
Anna.
seats.
Verz, we appreciate you as always. We'll talk again soon.
Do it.
See ya.